one of the things I learned in working at Fold is we make a lot of assumptions about what people know or remember, like in terms of an author's name and an author's like recognition. Most people don't actually like recognize or know authors well enough to be like, that's definitely so and so. Also, half of us don't look anything like our author photos, but that's a whole other thing. Welcome to Into the Fold, a book and lit fest podcast with JL and Lynn. I'm one of your hosts. My name is JL Richardson. I'm the founder and executive director of the Festival of Literary Diversity, also known as Fold.
And I am your other host. I am Hudson Lynn. I am the program coordinator at The Fold, and we are back for episode 2 of season 2 of Into the Fold.
If you listen to our first episode, you'll know that the first part of the season, we've got lots to say about author marketing. It's a particular obsession of mine. We want to talk about, we talked in the first episode about how marketing doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't have to be as much work as we often think it is. And so in this episode, we thought we would talk about adapting, borrowing, stealing strategies from other people in creative fields and pop culture use.
And to help us explore more of this topic, we have a very special guest with us today, Allie Temple. Hi, Allie. Welcome to the pod.
Woohoo!
Um, Allie is actually also our podcast producer, so she's going to be around and helping us with the podcast. And so you might see her pop up in the podcast a few times, or on our socials, or just around the Fold environment. Allie Temple is an indie author with 18 queer fantasy and romance titles published since 2018. She thrives on chaos, feelings, writing on instinct, and talking to anyone who will listen about K-pop, K-dramas, and her adorable pack of rescue pets. She lives with her very patient husband in Etobicoke, and I can attest that her pack of rescue pets are extremely adorable.
They may make a guest appearance. I have no. It's either that or the cat will scream at the door until I let him in. So
That's
I'll get him to
amazing.
say hi if he wants
We'll
to.
look forward to it. So let's get into it. All right, so we want to start the podcast or start the episode with fandoms and talking about fandoms. What are fandoms? What fandoms are you guys a part of? And what have you learned from these fandoms? Allie, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been part of different fandoms at different points in my life. Lately, I am a diehard K-pop fan, which is not something I ever would have seen coming for myself. I'm an elder millennial. The New Kids on the Block, Backstreet Boys, they were never things that I was interested in when I was like the appropriate age to be into these kinds of stuff. But it turns out you can be any age and be a fan of pop music. And so, yeah, I fell down the K-pop rabbit hole 2, 3 years ago. And it took a very long time for me to climb back out and be a mostly functional human being again. And that continues to be debatable if you ask the people closest to me.
That's amazing. And Ali kind of dragged me a little bit into the K-pop fandom, and so I can understand what is so addictive about that. But we'll talk more about why fandoms are so addictive. JL, what fandom are you a part of?
Well, I am like, stresses me out to admit this on the podcast because I've been like low key about it to like the larger population. I mean, anybody who's in my like inner circle knows. But I'm from a sports family. So I want to say where this started. I love football, have always loved football. I got into the In the Heights podcast with Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey when it first started, and I started listening to them, loved it. And when he started dating Taylor Swift, I started listening to Taylor Swift. And I really enjoyed, like, there was a song that came out, You're Losing Me, right when I started sort of paying attention to her. And it just like hit me hard. It was one of those songs that you listen to at a particular time and you're like, oh my gosh, I am affected. And then I sort of became fascinated with her as a businesswoman and in terms of like what she was putting out and when she was putting out and how her fans were kind of drawn to her in a way that like I became a fan. kind of reluctantly in a way, kind of slowly in a way. But now I'm like, I'm deep in it, guys. I'm deep in it. I cannot hide it. I followed the release of her album, The Tortured Poets Department. I was obsessed with the album. I have been sort of thinking about that album, but also just how she operated around that album and how she kind of maneuvers about the world. And I've also been interested in Swifties. And so, yeah, I became one while I was watching them. So, yeah, it's been fun.
So I think the thing I'm hearing from both of you is that you're both like a little bit reluctant at first to get to like call
I'm
yourself
too
a
old for
fan.
this, Lynn.
Yeah.
I'm too old.
Listen, you're never too old for anything. But like, so what I'm curious about is what is it about those specific fandoms that like has hooked you and
Mm,
that you're like, okay, fine, I'll admit that I'm a fan of this person or these people.
yeah.
I think for me, I mean, we'll probably, I'm going to talk about this lots today. I don't know about the rest of you, but I mean, it's the parasocial relationship.
Mm,
It's the feeling, well, it's two parts. It's the feeling of being like in community with the rest of the fandom and finding other people who really love something that you love. It's like falling in love for the first time, except instead
mm,
of being like, this is the person I'm in love with and I want to keep them with me, it's like the opposite, where like this is the group I'm in love with and I want to share it with absolutely everybody, even if I make it weird.
mm,
Um, and, but also, I think K-pop in particular is excellent at building that sense of relationship with someone who doesn't actually know that I exist. And again, I'm in my
mm,
40s. Most K-pop stars are in their early to mid 20s. It's not a romantic thing. It's not a like, oh, I hope he sees me at a concert and we fall in love. But it just feels like we know them even though we don't.
mm,
um,
mm.
and the knowing feels special because everyone else tells you that it's special, and yeah, you just sort of get caught in this like sense of understanding and community that particularly, the last couple of years, the outside world kind of sucks a lot of the time, and so if you can find those little happy spots like that, that is incredibly powerful and incredibly addictive. Like it's just nonstop dopamine, and I'm not mad about it at all.
It's funny. I think the same. I love love. I love love. Like I just love love. People in love love it. And so I think that that's always been a big draw with the Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift storyline. But I also really I love that Taylor Swift falls in love so hard and like does it so openly and puts it all out there in her music. I think there's a sense that when you listen to her music, you're getting to know her, and I think that's something that I've realized I've always loved. That's why I love country music. I'm making lots of confessions here in this particular episode. It's why I love country. It's why I love country music. I love when people just like bleed on the page in a way, and it's part of why I write. So I think that's also like a connection I feel to those kinds of artists who are willing to sort of share what's on their mind and in their innermost parts without hiding that it's them that they're talking about in some way. Um, so I really love that. I also think in terms of like the fandom, I think I've struggled to be honest with the fandom itself. I think as a black woman, I kind of wondered if I like fit in. I think as an older, slightly older than Taylor Swift, slightly older than I think her audience just continues to grow. Like it's like seven, but also like 70, it's like everybody's there. So I think once you realize that the age thing maybe isn't such a big deal, but the fandom I think still feels young to me at times. And so that's been a thing. But truly, Al, you just talked about this. The way it forms a place of escape is really quite helpful. It could also be like reckless. I think in times of like difficulty, we want to escape, and I think that's good. But for me, I also have to recognize when I need to get in and do the work. So that the fandom for me has been this tricky thing where I've learned to find the good, the happy moments. I've learned to find the calm in that space, but I've also like don't get so deep in it that I can't actually take part in reality. And so I think that's the cool thing about a fandom too, is that you can use it as an escape, but you can also jump back into the world really, really easily if
Yeah,
you keep your head on straight.
that's what I find. difficult for me with things that I'm a fan of also is that getting so like obsessed with it and going like getting really deep into it and feeling almost like when I come out of it, I'm like, what day is it? What's going on right now? Where am I? And like having that sort of like disassociation with reality is kind of it's a little frightening sometimes for me how easily I can fall into that kind of
Mhm.
situation with something that is um, very addicting or very consuming, where like K-pop and Swifties and Taylor Swift are definitely those types of things where you could just fall in and then you just like lose touch with real life. And that's
Suddenly you're counting everything and you're looking for Easter eggs in, like, the
yeah.
grocery store. Yeah, you can lose touch with reality real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think like the thing that you both mentioned and that I agree with is this sense of vulnerability that these stars or these like artists have when they present themselves in public, um and where it feels like you do get to know them or you get like a sneak peek into their inner private lives. And I think that is something that uh is really powerful, but again
Mm,
like also very dangerous, I think, like from their
mhm,
perspective of how much are they revealing to the entire world. um
mm,
so yeah,
yeah,
that's the thing that I'm always worried about when I see these artists like putting videos of themselves doing all sorts of random things online. I'm like, really, is that really a good idea?
mhm.
I was gonna
Yeah.
pop in a example I heard on the radio from Cindy Crawford years ago about how like she was one of the most photographed women in the world, but she was always sort of untouchable because at the time the industry was very controlled. And so like you only saw her in magazines and celebrity interviews, but like she didn't come up in the Instagram era. So like you only saw the polished version, whereas now Taylor and K-pop and everybody else in a creative field, like you've got to put some part of yourself out there.
Mm,
Yeah, it's not just what the publicists want people to see, what the photographer wants people to see. Like it's a little bit of yourself. You do have to give up a little bit of yourself, um,
mhm.
but in a way that's safe. I think Lynn's point about it being safe is really important.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting to me too as an author, like what I kind of look at when I look at Taylor Swift, when I look at how she's handling things, you see a place in her life where she was much more open, where she did a lot more for like to her fans, for her fans, if we want to say that. And now as she's getting older, as her life is changing, you know, that she's a bit more controlled about what she's putting out there and how she's putting that out there. And I think that's also a really interesting thing to see how people respond to that. You know, as an author, I've been kind of thinking about, you know, how much do I put out there? How much do I want to put out there? You know, I have a personal Instagram account and I use it to post about my son. I use it to post about books I'm reading. I used to post it about vacation and I use it to promote my books as they come out. And that to me feels like the most authentic way to operate. And I think that's one of the things that I really took away from and I continue to take away from being a Swiftie is understanding that I'm not a writer in one corner and a person in another corner, that like my writing is tied to who I am and what I put out there. You know, my son's 16, so I've had to be like respectful of what he wants out there. And respectful of, you know, I have to check with him before I can post anything with his face in it. And I have to be mindful of that because he has to agree to that kind of, you know, public facing experience. And I think that that's been a really it's been helpful for me to see someone kind of navigate that, make changes and adjustments, do things differently. I really appreciate that kind of insight from watching like the biggest pop star in the world.
Mhm. I think I'm going to contradict what I just said earlier, where I said that.
No contradictions allowed. We only once you make a statement, it is out in the world and it is
I have
law.
to stick to it forever. No, but what I said that like they are showing a lot of vulnerability and showing sides of themselves that normal people on the street might not want the whole world to know.
Mm,
Um, but uh, I think in reality, it's probably that part is also curated, right? Like
Mhm,
they have decided, or they've worked with a publicist, or they've worked with their like management company or whatever to decide that, like, hey, these types of things we're going to show, and then these types of things we are not, to create a sense of authenticity that still allows them to have a degree of privacy. Um, and so my whole point is that, like, it's a very curated uh,
mhm,
version of these pop stars that we're seeing. And I think as an author, that's the lesson we take, right? Like, in order for us to try to create our own fandom, we do have to be a little vulnerable and we do have to share parts of ourselves, but it doesn't mean we have to share everything. And we can curate what parts we want to show and what parts we keep to ourselves. And not to say that we're presenting a fake version of ourselves, like everything we're showing is still who we are. It's just only a part of who we are. It's not the whole picture, but it's enough of a picture that other people feel like they can get to know us.
mhm,
So, okay, so two other things I want to touch on very quickly that I've noticed with fandoms, that I'm just like super, super fascinated with. One is the names that
mhm,
fans give to themselves. I think usually these are like fan generated organically, right?
mhm.
It's not like someone gives them. I don't know, correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong. But like for Taylor Swift, fans are called Swifties. And in K-pop, the one of the really big bands right now is Stray Kids, and all of their fans are called Stays. And this, like, having both the having this name and also having kind of like an inside lingo of like how to talk about things, really helps bring that community feel to all of the fans. Can you guys talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so in K-pop, actually, the fandom names are usually decided by the entertainment company, um, and it's
Mhm,
a like it's a whole again, it's all controlled and curated, but feels organic, and like that's the magic. That's the masterclass of K-pop marketing. Is everything feels like grassroots when in fact there is this machine of an industry that builds everything. So in K-pop, the fandom names get decided, they get announced to much fanfare, and then every year, if you go back through the multitude, for example, of Stray Kids YouTube videos, you will find that every year in September, I believe, there is a birthday party for Stay. um, and Stay is always just referred to as like one singular. Stay is both like the singular and the plural, and so happy birthday Stay every September.
mhm.
And it makes people feel like they're appreciated. Like every single concert, someone says, like, I'm just so grateful for all this day who are here. Um, it is, I'm going to be honest, something that struck me when Lynn was talking is it is a little culty. Like the use
For
of
sure.
like secret language and the terms that no one else knows what they mean. Like that is one of the basic hallmarks of a cult. Um, in this case, it's one of those like newly formed happy cults where like we're just spreading love and community to the world. But eventually it can turn a little weird and toxic if you're not careful. But yeah, it's really about just reinforcing the sense of like we are all in this together and we all understand each other. Which is what fandom really is building for people.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not sure like if the Swifties came up with it or if Taylor Swift said something about it. Same, I know Bayhive was like something that came from the Beyonce fan community. And so I think it can be a little bit of a mixture in some cases. But it is it I think the the thing about cults, we criticize them a lot, but they are actually like the world operates with cults all the time. If you look at sports fandom, cults, like if you look at, it's not just in music. And it's an interesting thing to think about as an author. Like, how do you build sort of a cult following in the best possible way? Like, what kinds of things does it take? What do you need to be aware of if you want to build a fandom? And then we can talk about fandoms that are small or massive. It does not have to be this huge thing. How do you build that kind of devotion, that kind of interest, that kind of excitement, enthusiasm? And I think feeling like you're a part of something and having a name is really one of the key parts about it. You know what I mean? Like, I think understanding how you fit into that space, being able to say, like, I'm a Swiftie because I've listened to this many albums, or because I'm a fan, or because I've followed her since X. That you become a part of a club. I think clubs were the socially acceptable way to talk about it when we were younger. And I think now, like, understanding that that really is like the origin of kind of a cult mentality and a cult approach, and understanding why that happens and how that happens is how good marketing is actually done. And I think that's one of the things that fandoms can teach us. I think authors are sometimes afraid to treat their books as, and I say this to two self published authors who navigate the self published world, in which this is not a problem for you. But in the traditional publishing world, people are very like ego about selling and promoting and pushing their books and building fandoms. Like, most, especially like the more literary fiction side you get to it, the less cool it is to talk about like selling and making money and having fans. But like, that's not how I see it. Like, I'm traditionally published, and I'm interested in selling books.
Yeah, I think one of the other things about cults, or like these fandoms and cult followings, is like merch, right? And
Mm,
so that's also part of the selling the books, right? You sell not only your book, but you sell all of the paraphernalia around it, which is how things like Star Wars goes from a series of movies to this entire like enterprise
mm,
of just, I don't even know what to call it, right? You can have the movies, but you also get like the figurines, and you can get like all the different spaceships, and you can get like
mhm,
stuffies, and like, and you just become entirely engrossed in this world of that's like been created around one original piece of content. Um and so like with Taylor Swift, the friendship bracelets just became like the hugest thing ever, right?
mhm,
And like even in the author world, readers were creating friendship bracelets and going to like book conventions and trading with each other, even though like the bracelets themselves and like the event that they were going to had nothing to do with Taylor Swift, but it just became this like cultural phenomenon that you would apply the friendship bracelet to all of the other things that you do. And from K-pop, the one thing I noticed that is just the most adorable thing ever is that they give each band member a mascot. And so they like assign some sort of
mm,
animal or like caricature to a band member, and then every band member has their own little like mascot version of themselves, and they get these like little toys. They've used it in like posters. They even get okay, Allison, you're gonna have to like explain this more, but they get people to dress up as those mascots, and they do these like fan meeting things where
mhm.
like the actual artist like and the mascot, they're all on stage. Okay, you can probably explain it better than I can.
So in the case of Stray Kids, so they're called Skizoo, SK Zoo. Yeah, and so each member has a I saw a TikTok recently where someone was like, "So it's like a fursona," and they were like, "No, it's completely different." But
It's a persona. I
um,
like it.
I
yeah,
love it.
so you've got a wolf, and you've got a rabbit, and you've got a puppy and a fox. And yeah, and then when you have in-person fan meetings, you get people dressed up like these things. Both like fans come dressed as them, but also you have like people on stage in giant mascot costumes, and they do the dance routines. Um,
Mm,
and then you see it. Like the thing I find fascinating about merch is that, like particularly in K-pop, and I suspect in Swifties and other fandoms, like the vast majority of the merch that I have ever purchased has all been fan generated. Like there is official merch, and like you can buy K-pop albums, and that's its own undertaking, but like you can buy stickers and mugs and hats and shirts and all of these things on places like Etsy and Redbubble. That's all, drop ship, drop printed, fandom created, and it's such a powerful part of the enterprise. When in fact, I mean, it's a bit of a gray zone as to whether or not you're legally allowed to use the skizoos in your fan art and then sell it to people. Um, but so far, K-pop has decided to look the other way, um, and it keeps people engaged in the content because then you start following artists on Instagram, and then when they do new merch drops, you order more keychains, even though I ran out of keys a long time ago. Like
Mhm.
it becomes this never-ending cycle, but it's entirely fan generated. The
Mm.
organization, the official organization, doesn't have to do anything. It's just the fans that keep the flywheel turning.
That's the super
Yeah.
interesting thing about these fandoms, right? It's like you get to a critical mass and then it just self perpetuates. And as the artist or as like the whatever, um, it doesn't seem like they need to do that much anymore once you
Mhm.
get like the momentum going and the fans just sort of perpetuate themselves, which is fascinating to try to figure out like what is that critical mass, like where does that
Mm.
switch and where can like fans start taking over that momentum.
Well, and I want to ask you guys this because I love, I mean, I could talk about this forever. Um, I could talk about fandoms and like obsessions and all these sorts of things for a long time because I think about it a lot. I think about my books and how I build quote unquote a brand or an identity to the public. But I do think, as I mentioned earlier, like for traditionally published authors, it's a new space to navigate. A lot of them have not been trained, encouraged, or think about these things at all. And so I'm curious from the self published spaces in particular, where you put on a lot of your own like conventions and meetups and that sort of thing. How have you seen some of the lessons of cult followings, pop culture applied to authors in your spaces?
Yeah, I think it's like it's all of the things that we've been talking about, right? Like giving your fans a name that they can identify with, giving them a space that they can
Have you seen an
sh-
author do that that has like a
oh,
name
like
for their fans?
tons. I can't think of anything off the
Ooh.
top of my mind, but
Mm,
a lot of authors have Facebook groups where
mm,
they create the Facebook group and then they let their fans like talk to each other, and then they also go in and interact with their fans, and their Facebook groups are always like authors names something something, like fan name.
mm.
i'm it's,
Yeah,
I'm not explaining it well, I'm giving no examples,
I have an
but
example.
it does exist.
Yeah,
Do you
my
have
Facebook
one, Ellie?
group used to be called Allison's A List. And so
Mm,
all of the people in that group were called A-listers. And I'm not
mm.
nearly as famous as Taylor Swift, so it never developed that critical momentum. But yeah, but it was the A-list, and anyone who was on the A-list was an A-lister.
I want to start a fan group called Jailbirds with you.
Oh, you should totally do that. That's a great
Yeah,
one. And I
yeah.
love how there's
But
always like a little pun in it sometimes. It needs to be cute.
it needs to be cute. I love that so you've seen people use names and then use them like to create a chat and a discussion
Mhm.
group and sort of have people follow along.
Yeah. So
That's
like Facebook
interesting.
groups is huge and Discord is really big too. A lot of authors have them on Discord. And like things like merch is also huge.
Mm,
What is it called? Character art is a big deal. Authors spend thousands and thousands of dollars
mhm,
commissioning character art of their characters, both like in the romance world, you get the safe for work versions and the not safe for work versions. And I think sometimes they sell prints and sometimes they just commission them and then post them for people to see
mm,
and like gush over. So there's
mm,
character art, and then a lot of authors, not a lot, some authors also have like merch where they have a series logo on a t-shirt, or like if there's a coffee shop in the series, they'll have the
mm.
coffee shop logo on a t-shirt or on a mug or things like that.
Ah, that's neat.
So they create merch around their books.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I've
I've
seen
always done that.
that as an
Go ahead,
extension
Allie.
of that, like the coffee shop logo for your coffee series. You can also I've seen it done where like we're selling this merch, but all of the proceeds will be donated to X, Y, and Z charity. And so now you're also building in that like social consciousness element to something you're already working on. My spaces are largely queer, so there's a lot of fundraising efforts towards LGBT charities and organizations and things like that. So you get to like layer on not only feeling like you're part of a community, but also this is a community that's doing good. Um,
Mm,
and that's an important part of it as well.
mm. I've always made merch for most of my books. I think Gutter Child was the only one that I didn't, because they actually made tote bags. My publisher made tote bags for Gutter Child, which turned out to be really great because it came out during the pandemic and it's very easy to ship totes. Other things not as easy. But I've always had merch for my books in some way, whether it was my publisher or I remember for my kids' book, The Stone Thrower, I made like a t-shirt. And so when I would go to kids' events, I would wear the t-shirt because I think one of the things I learned in working at Fold is we make a lot of assumptions about what people know or remember, like in terms of an author's name and an author's like recognition. Most people don't actually like recognize or know authors well enough to be like, that's definitely so and so. Also, half of us don't look anything like our author photos, but that's a whole other thing. And so I thought it was really useful for me to have merch when I would go to do readings, especially at kids' events, because it would connect them to the book. It would help them, understand, oh, that's the author of that book. And it was always helpful, like when I was doing virtual events, even it was really useful to be able to wear something that connected to the book. And
Did
it's also
you
one of the sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
did you just wear those t-shirts yourself or did you actually sell them to
I
readers?
never sold them because I was never interested in the process of buying, owning, selling, tracking. That was never like a thing for me. I did at one point buy onesies that said, readers or leaders or something cute, little readers something, I can't remember what it said, but it was very cute, and I used it to because I found a lot of people wanted to buy books from me for baby showers. And so I was like, oh, you can get this onesie and a book and I will sell it to you for this amount. And it helped create like a fulsome gift, I think, for people doing showers. And it's also one of the reasons we did merch for Fold, because one of the things I realized, am I wearing it now? Yes. Is Lynn wearing it now? If you're listening to us, you want to check it out on YouTube so you can see it. But one of the things that I found was that people want to support the Fold. People want to support what you're doing when it's something that they believe in and feel strongly about. And you can ask for donations a lot, and you do, and people do donate, but it's also nice to be able to have them donate and get something in return. And that's the great thing about merch when you have a good system set up. You can actually give them something and receive something and have it be like mutually beneficial. And Ali was talking about that social conscious mindset. I think that's a part of, for me, one of the reasons why we kicked off Fold Apparel, and made it something that we could update, we could add stuff. We could throw in different types of stuff. I may be hinting at an announcement coming, but we could do all kinds of things when we built a system that was manageable. And I will say that's one of the things authors, when we talk about all these ideas, one of the things that as an author you have to kind of sift out is, what do I want? Like what is the end goal? And what am I willing to do to achieve that? Because there are certain things I'm not willing to do. And buying merch and selling it from my house and packing it up in little boxes for myself personally was not it. And so yeah, I think it's cool to think about and kind of sift through what works for you.
Yeah, I think like we could go on and on and on about all the different ideas and ways that you can build community with your readers and create your own little fandom. But I think it's important to acknowledge that this is a lot of work. It is
Mhm.
a lot of work. And like Taylor Swift has tons of money to hire an entire publicity team to help her with this. K-pop bands have a management company that have entire departments devoted to running all of this stuff for them. And as an author, unless you're like, I don't know, like a Stephen King or something. Like most
Yeah.
of us don't have the budget to be hiring publicity teams or even like a publicity person.
Hmm.
So we have to be really conscious about how much I can do, how much do I want to do, and why. Again, like JL said, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it just because like JL and Lynn said we should do this on Into the Fold, or am I doing it because there's a clear end goal I'm trying to achieve, and there's a clear path between where I am and how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And even I think like don't it's very easy to get caught up in like the comparisonitis. Like I mean, we don't even have to look to someone like Taylor Swift. But even just other authors within our niche, like I see people who are like, "Hey, here's my web store, and I've got shirts, and I've got this, and I've got foiled special editions with sprayed edges." And like it's really exciting and like it'd be really cool if I had that, but also all of that takes time and money.
Mhm.
And we don't know what's going on the backside of their business. You know, are they doing this because they feel like they have to, or are they doing this because they actually have the fandom in place to financially support adding on these other elements to their business? So it's easy to like see social media posts and be like, oh, I should do that too. But that doesn't mean you do actually have to. Like it needs to be something that speaks to your brand, feels worthwhile to you, and is actually achievable. You know, you can't go out and spend zillions of dollars on special editions just because it feels like everyone else is.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've seen done with authors is work that I would just recommend. I think work within your interests. Like if you want to wear a t-shirt with your book cover on it or some version of it, wear it, do a post with it, and have some way that if someone asks about it, you can maybe share or direct them or whatever. That's something that you can think about. Or as I do, I just say, no, they're not available. I only have one. um, and I think the other thing is like, I'm thinking of SK Ali used to do really cute things with like notebooks and stickers and bookmarks. And I think personally, she really enjoyed making them. I think she enjoyed creating them. And it also gave her some joy when she would go to events. She felt like there was something she was able to give to people. And I think if I recall, there wasn't like a fee for it. It was like, I have a book signing, here are some stickers, or here are some pencils, or here are some stuff. And I think it's one of the things I would recommend is if you get any kind of advance for your book, any kind of advance. I'm talking $100 to $60,000 or 100,000, however these big people get advances. Is to really think about how you can use at least a portion of that to create more. And that's just like a basic money strategy. But however much money you get, instead of, I mean, I don't think most authors are living off their income entirely. So I'm speaking to the kind of author who is writing and also has another job so that when that money comes in, it's not like what they have to use to pay their mortgage. So if you have to use it to pay your mortgage. But if you happen to have money come in a way that's like a little bit of extra, whether, like I said, whether it's a small amount or a big amount, think about what you could buy, purchase, create that you could take with you. You could show in videos from your home. Like some people will have like a picture of their book in the background. Like realize that whenever you're doing a virtual event and someone clips from it, if you don't have your book in the background, they may not know, especially as it gets shared around, what your book is. And so think about things that you can create and put around you, on you, bring with you that will create that awareness, that visibility, that fandom. And be thinking about that. I always say, as soon as you submit that manuscript, you know you have at least 6 months before that book comes out. Start thinking about it at that time. How do I prepare to build a fandom? And even if it's a fandom of 50, like how do I make those 50 people who are going to love my book feel like they're a part of the journey and feel like they understand? Because I think that's what these fandoms do. I want to use one example that I thought Taylor Swift did that was really great for her album. She announced her album at like the Grammys or something, and then had like a pop-up. And we all cannot do pop-ups, but she did like a pop-up where people could go and like there were teasers for the album in the pop-up, and the teasers pointed to a second album, and there were all these little things that were so carefully thought out. So the lesson I took from that is not build a pop-up in LA and expect people to go. It's, think about it so far in advance that you can create these really special experiences that allow you to have even something to talk about on social media, something for other people to talk about on social media. I think that's one of the takeaways I took from that.
And applying that concept to books and book launches, I've seen this done both with self published authors as well as traditionally published authors, where they will create a pre order incentive. So if you pre order the paperback or the hardcover or whatever from a particular bookstore, you will get this extra piece of merch when the book comes out and it'll be mailed to
Mhm,
you along with your book. And so, I've seen lots of authors do this. The one that comes to mind immediately is Jackie Lau.
mhm.
She loves stickers and stationery, and I think that's just something she likes. And so she would commission um, artists to create little graphics or whatever that match her books, turn them into stickers, and that becomes her pre-order incentive. Someone pre-orders from what, I don't remember which store she worked with, but whatever store, and then she'll give like the stack of stickers to the store when they're sending out the books. They just include one of those in the book.
Mm. I'm a little bit obsessed with book launches now too, and thinking about it. I think because I did a traditional book launch for The Stone Thrower. Children's books don't typically have book launches, so for those books, I kind of made stuff up, and I would do them differently if I went back. Um, and then for Gutter Child, it was virtual, so we were in the pandemic, so I haven't done an in-person one, but I'm really interested in rethinking book launches or being really strategic with the book launch and understanding how people consume books. If like when and this happened with Beyonce, I was watching Beyonce's Cowboy Carter and TTPD, which the Torture Poets Department release. And Beyonce's came out at 12 o'clock wherever you were in the world. So it was like different all over. And Taylor's came out right at midnight Eastern Standard Time. So everybody was listening to it at the same time. And everybody who was like a diehard was on there and found out about the second album at the exact same time and listened to the second album. I didn't sleep the whole night. But you realize there's this experience of consuming the album at the same time. And with books, that's harder to manage. And I find sometimes we treat book launches as though they're the day that everybody's read it. That used to be like, especially with advanced review copies um and reviews, like news reviews that used to be out there. It used to be they come out and these people have read it and so you read it. But now we know that space is gone. Like there's not a lot of book reviews that are coming out the day a book comes out. So your book launch is the first day most people are going to get a copy and they're not going to have it read. So, how can you create an experience, perhaps starting with your book launch or starting with your pub day, that allows people to read it, perhaps like a read along or something, read it together, read it as some sort of collective with the hope of some kind of celebration at the end of that reading portion? What do we do to celebrate that we've all read it? What can we talk about now that we've all read it? How long do we expect people to take to read it? I think that kind of experience is what I'm really curious about watching with other people as I prepare for a book to come out, and just to think about as a marketing strategy. How can I create a reading experience that gets people to feel like they're even together as they consume a book?
And that's where things like the Facebook groups, the Discords, there's an app called Fable that's basically like an online book club app. It gives people, gives authors like that landing spot to say like the book is out today, and if you join my Facebook group, like this Friday, we're going to be having like a spoiler chat. You can ask me any questions you want. And so it does double duty. A, it sort of creates that like celebratory, like, yay, the book is out, but also it builds that community where you're going to connect again with other people who really enjoyed something that you also enjoyed. You feel a little bit like you're getting some exclusive access either to other people or to the author. Um, yeah, those things do really well in online spaces because it creates a destination, a date, and then a little bit of friendship and community after the fact.
Love that. Love it. I think what would be really cool, I love the idea that as we like wrap up these like conversations, that we sort of leave people with top tips and sort of advice that we like, what's one thing? Because I think sometimes when we hear all this, we get like super overwhelmed by like the amount of content, the amount of options, the amount of expectation. In the last episode, we talked a bit about publicity and some of the things that kind of revisited in this one. But I wonder, when we think specifically about fandoms and we think about building community, what is one tip that you would want authors to know or want to leave them with?
I think the first thing you want to do is really define, and like this is always going to evolve, but I think you want to be clear for yourself about who that author persona is going to be.
Mm,
Because again, I think it's really easy to look at the authors around you in your niche and think you should be building something similar to them, whether it's, I'm obsessed with coffee or we're all
mhm.
here for like burly men and flannel shirts. But like if that's not your thing, it's going to feel really
Yep.
tiring.
Mhm.
to have to present that over and over, like, here's another burly man in a flannel shirt. Like, if that's such a jam, you're going to get tired of that brand very quickly. So think
Mm.
about who it is you want to present, whether it's your pack of adorable rescue pets, whether you want to show off your latest friendship bracelet project, um, because readers do pick up on sincerity.
Mm.
So you want to sort of, and also that helps you set the boundary of like, but I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to show my kids on screen. I'm not going to talk about parenting difficulties. I want to keep it about myself and the things I love, or my pets or my hobbies or whatever it is.
Mm.
So, define that before you start doing anything else. Give it room to grow as you grow. Um, but don't feel like it's got to be, in fact, it shouldn't be what everyone else is doing, because then you've lost your point of differentiation. So for marketing, it's all about what makes you an individual, and what part of that individual are you going to be presenting to readers.
Mm.
I would say, building on top of that, once you have defined who your author persona is, then you have to use that persona to interact with readers and to build that relationship with readers. And so it can be as simple as, if someone tags you on social media saying like, "Oh, I read this author's book, I loved it so much," and they've tagged you, then you leave a comment on their post and say, "Thank you so much. I'm really glad you enjoyed the book." Maybe you reshare their
Mm.
post, and it starts slow, but the more interactions you have with like that one book talker
Mhm.
or bookstagrammer, they're going to be like, "Oh, this author interacts with me," and
Mhm.
so I'm going to be more incentivized or more willing to like read more of their stuff, and maybe I can become friends with the author, and
Mm.
that's like a blurry line, right? How closely you become friends with your readers. But if you're giving them that feeling that they have access to you, that helps create that fandom. So it can be, like I said, responding to comments. We talked about having a Facebook group where you can interact with your readers. I don't have a Facebook group. I do that on Instagram. So I have an Instagram chat, but other authors use Discord. So all these are all
Mhm.
ways of interacting with readers. If you have a newsletter, one of the sort of best practices in a newsletter is to include a question in your newsletter and ask them to reply to your newsletter. Not only
Mm.
does that that builds a relationship and gets them to like interact with you, but it's also good for your newsletter stats. And so there's like algorithms working in the background whenever you send out emails, and the more people respond to your newsletters, uh, the less likely you'll end up in spam and junk mailboxes. But that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation. When So the last thing I want to mention is like, if someone emails you, responds to your newsletter, write back. And it
Mm.
can be as simple as "thank you so much," or like "thanks for replying," or "that's a great book recommendation," or like "have a great weekend." But just like a little acknowledgement of like, yes, you're a human being, I'm a human being, and we've just had an interaction.
I think mine, and I'll speak like very much to trad pub folks in particular, but I'm there might be some self pub folks as well, because I think most trad folks are at a more basic level in doing this. And so the thing I want to ask folks is understand the why of why you're doing anything. There are a lot of patterns, habits, and routines in traditional publishing about when publicity happens, about how to do a book launch, about how to host a reading or how to host an event. A lot of very just rote, routine activities that have not fully adapted to the way people do virtual events or the way people do in person events anymore. And so I think understanding and thinking about the why of everything. Why am I doing a book launch? Why am I doing a book club? Or why would I want to do a book club? What would I want to bring into those spaces or do so that it's not an isolated event, so that it creates a relationship, sort of going into what Lynn was talking about? It creates a thread. It's the beginning of a journey with a reader as opposed to just a one off occasion. So, my big thing is start with why. And start early and ask these questions. What would I want to experience at an event, and why? Why am I doing a book launch, and what is my goal from it? And really having more understanding of things rather than just being excited that you have a book come out, really starting to think of it from a business perspective and from a marketing perspective and from a money generating perspective. All right. The exciting thing about this top tips that we just did is that it's a little bit of a teaser into our next episode and our next conversation. I want to say a big thank you to Allie for joining us in this episode. I learned so much. I am going to try and stay away from K-pop only because I don't think I have time to join another fandom at this moment.
You
But
will look at
that's my
reality
only reason.
first at a
Yeah,
time. That
it
right
will
now.
s-
Start.
it will suck all of your time. So that's
Yeah.
a wise decision.
The personas, I'm so curious, but like I don't think I should. I don't think I should look because I won't stop. But I just want to say thank you for joining us, and it really does lead us nicely into our next episode where we want to talk about writing to market and the idea. There's been a couple posts coming out from some people I really admire about this idea of writing with intent to sell, and thinking about that and whether that's good or whether that's bad and how to do that well and, some of the dangers of it. So I'm looking forward to that conversation.
And so we're just going to close out with a few announcements. RF Kwong is coming back to the fold.
Woo
Yay.
woo.
She's coming on September 15th to celebrate the release of her new book, Catabasis. I think that's how you say it. There's been debate around how to say it. I say Catabasis.
Mhm.
Tickets are on sale now. They're going quickly, but there's still room. So check out the fold canada.org/RF Kwong for more info and to get your tickets.
Okay, so we have some other big news. We kind of teased at the beginning and we've made you wait this long. I am so excited. We have partnered with HarperCollins and Rebecca R.F. Kuang. We've been allowed to produce a limited edition line of R.F. Kuang specific merch. It's only available through our store and it's only available for a limited time, like specifically until September 17th. So that's all the time you have, depending on when you listen to this podcast, September 17th, 2025. That's it. That's all you've got. We've got really great t-shirts, sweaters, hats, totes, all inspired by R.F. Kuang, inspired by the new book, but also a few items inspired by some of the other titles. In case you haven't had a chance yet to read Catabasis, get your copy, pre-order it, read it, and get ready for the tour. We're really excited to have her, and we're really excited to show up at events in our merch, which all proceeds go to support the Fold.
A quick reminder that if you watch Fold Academy, the last day to watch this past season of Fold Academy is August 31st. We've got some really great webinars, such as how to write short stories, how to find your author voice. I did one around introduction to self-publishing. Amanda Leduc did one around how to build a life as a disabled writer. So there's tons of really great webinars. You can learn lots. Visit thefoldcanada.org/academy
Mhm.
to get the link to all of those videos. If you have missed any of our previous Into the Fold episodes, you can find them on our podcast feed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Fold's YouTube channel, or any other major podcast platform. And if you would like to support the work of the Fold or of this podcast, please leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice and tell all of your friends about us. You can also donate to us at thefoldcanada.org/donate.
Well, one thing I just want to say before we go is we need to come up with a name for Into the Fold and Fold fans.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say we need a fan name. Yes.
Make a suggestion. Let us know. This can be a fan generated name because nothing is coming to me right now. But until next time, happy reading and happy writing.